Karen ordered my arrest on my farm. Deputies surrounded them, and you ever get the feeling that the land itself remembers? I do, especially out here where my grandfather's boot prints once marked every inch of this soil, where the old oak tree still leans like it's whispering war stories, and where the wind carries secrets like unpaid debts. My name's Jackson Ridge. I'm 38 ex-wildland firefighter turned off-grid homesteader. I bought my grandfather's old ranch back after working 12 years out west, saving every cent I could while my back broke under smoke and sweat. This land isn't just property, it's my past, my peace, and my promise to the man who raised me. That promise got tested the day a woman named Deborah Cartwright, president of the Clear Valley Homeowners Association, marched onto my land like she was General Patton, and I was the enemy. See, my ranch sits just past the gated community's edge. Their HOA line ends at the creek, my creek. But when a few city slicker transplants moved in and mistook my rooster for a disturbance, suddenly Deborah decided she had jurisdiction over everything within earshot. It started with a letter, thin white envelope, gold embossed CVHOA seal, inside a $300 fine for unauthorized livestock, no return address, no phone number, just a warning: remove animals or face further enforcement. I laughed at first, tossed it in the burn barrel, figured that'd be the end of it. It wasn't. The next week, two men in navy polos with community standards enforcer stitched over their chests showed up. They had walkie-talkies, clipboards, and sunglasses that screamed wannabe cop. They parked right next to my barn and started taking photos like it was a crime scene. I stepped outside, grease on my hands, sweat soaking through my flannel. "You boys lost?" I asked. The shorter one, pudgy, smug, didn't even look up. "You're in violation of HOA Zoning Code 18.3, unauthorized agriculture. We're documenting. You're on my land. This is governed territory," he snapped. "Clear Valley expanded enforcement jurisdiction last month." That's when I realized it. They weren't confused. They were emboldened. By the end of the month, I'd been fined 5 more times. Deborah even mailed me a cease and desist over the color of my barn, claiming it clashed with community aesthetics. My barn's been red since 1954. It's in photos with my great-grandfather holding the first calf ever born here. She didn't care. But the final straw wasn't a letter. It wasn't a visit. It was the morning they tried to arrest me, and it almost worked if the real deputies hadn't shown up. It was a Tuesday, one of those blistering July mornings when the air feels like it's been wrung through a furnace. I was out back hammering a new latch onto the chicken coop, minding my own damn business, when the rumble of tires rolled up my gravel path. Not one car, 3, all unmarked. I stood slowly, wiped my hands on my jeans and squinted toward the sun. Out stepped Deborah Cartwright, wrapped in a tight navy suit like she was walking onto a courtroom set. Behind her came the same 2 fake officers, those HOA enforcers, and 2 new ones. Bigger, meaner looking. One of them wore combat boots like he just stepped off a paintball field. The other had a belt full of zip ties like it made him feel powerful. I could already tell this wasn't another fine. "Mr. Ridge," Deborah announced, arms folded, chin high like a queen surveying a peasant. "You have failed to comply with multiple HOA violations, ignored 5 formal notices, and refused visual correction of community standards." I scoffed. "This is private property. You know damn well this land isn't in your jurisdiction. You've left us no choice," she continued, snapping her fingers. The bigger enforcer stepped forward. "Sir, you are under citizen's arrest under HOA Code 21. 1A, obstruction of enforcement and failure to vacate restricted land." I took a slow breath. Restricted land. This is my family's ranch. It's on county records, and I'm not in your HOA. You people are trespassing. He pulled out a zip tie. That's when I backed up. Not out of fear, out of calculation. Because tucked in the side pocket of my tool belt was the emergency sheriff's band radio my cousin left behind. He's a sergeant 2 counties over. I clicked the button and said the phrase we'd agreed on if anything shady ever went down. "Unit 4, this is Ridge. Got HOA in progress with attempted detainment. Request county confirmation." A voice crackled back within 10 seconds. Copy that. Ridge. Deputies en route. ETA 6 minutes. Maintain eyes. Do not engage. I made damn sure they heard it. You hear that, I asked calmly, turning toward Deborah. You brought your goon squad to arrest someone on private land? That's false detainment. You're about to learn what real jurisdiction means. Deborah's face twitched. She motioned for the enforcers to move faster. They lunged. I didn't resist. I let them zip-tie my wrists and shove me to my knees in the dirt, not because I couldn't fight, but because I wanted the full picture captured when the real boys in brown showed up. And they did. It started with dust on the horizon, then the deep, unmistakable rumble of county-issued Ford Interceptors. 3 cruisers peeled down the road, lights silent but flashing, sirens off to keep the shock pure. They stopped 20 yards from the barn. Doors flew open. Real deputies, 6 of them, piled out with rifles shouldered and commands sharp. Drop the zip ties, hands in the air. Now Deborah's face went gray. The fake officers froze like mannequins. One reached for his radio, wrong move. A deputy aimed center mass and barked, "Move again, and I put you down." It was glorious. The HOA team dropped everything. Literally. Zip ties clattered to the gravel. Clipboards hit the dirt. And Deborah, Miss Supreme HOA herself, lifted her trembling hands and muttered, "This is a misunderstanding." Sheriff Caldwell, a stocky man with a voice that carried like thunder, stepped out from the second cruiser and said calmly, "Ma'am, you just committed attempted unlawful detainment, trespassing, and impersonation of an officer. We have it all on camera." Her lip quivered. "I was enforcing HOA compliance." He stepped closer. "There is no lawful extension of your HOA onto Mr. Unridge's property. We confirmed the parcel lines this morning after he filed multiple complaints. You ignored our warnings. Now you're facing felony charges." "Felony," she gasped. "I didn't know. You didn't care," I said, still kneeling in the dirt. Deputy Lynn cut my ties. "You all right?" "Jackson," I stood up slow, wrists red and burning, but my pride solid. "Better than I've felt in weeks." I said, "Now can y'all do something about this circus?" They did. One by one, the fake enforcers were cuffed and escorted to cruisers. Deborah tried to play. The victim claimed I was hostile, that the boundaries were confusing, that she had a mandate from the HOA board. None of it held. The real kicker: one of the enforcers had a concealed baton, pepper spray, and a fake badge he ordered online. Possession of those on someone else's property during an attempted citizen's arrest. Felony with intent to impersonate. I watched from the porch as they drove off. Deborah in the back seat, mouth clamped shut. But the story wasn't over. Because what I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that Deborah wasn't acting alone. They hauled Deborah Cartwright away like a deflated queen, her fake crown crumbling under the weight of cold steel cuffs. But the moment that patrol car rolled out of my gate, my gut told me something wasn't finished. See, that level of audacity, that kind of arrogance doesn't happen overnight. You don't just wake up one morning and decide to march onto someone's land with 4 goons and a stack of fake code violations unless you think you're invincible. Unless someone's been telling you you are. And I couldn't stop thinking about that line she spat before they zip-tied me. You left us no choice. Us. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat out on the porch with a lantern, my old granddad's shotgun beside me, not out of fear, but out of habit. This land had been targeted now. I knew predators don't quit just because the first trap snapped shut, so I got to work. First thing I did was pull the parcel records. I still had login access from my days as a volunteer land restoration agent in the fire department. I could access state GIS maps, zoning overlays, and every registered HOA in the county. What I found made my blood run cold. Clear Valley HOA, the one Deborah ran, had filed an amended enforcement boundary request 6 months ago. It was quietly approved by a county clerk who'd retired 2 weeks later. That amendment extended their authority beyond the creek, past the old wood line, and right into a 400-acre patchwork of homesteads, including mine. Thing was, no one had been notified. No mailers, no town halls, No signatures from the landowners, just a rubber-stamped PDF with legalese buried in Section 47. It was illegal, but more than that, it was strategic. I started looking at the landowners near me. Franklin Wood, an old war vet with Parkinson's, had been cited for excess livestock. His wife told me she didn't fight it because she thought it was real law. Angela Reyes, a single mom with 3 kids, got hit with a lien after failing to landscape per HOA guidelines. She didn't even live in Clear Valley, her lot backed up against it. And in every case, they all said the same thing. They didn't want trouble. They didn't want to be labeled difficult, because that's how it works, doesn't it? You push just hard enough, you bury folks in paperwork, you wear them down with visits and threats and fake citations until they fold. And then you take, I wasn't folding. So I took everything I found to Sheriff Caldwell. He listened in silence. No notes, just that poker face of his that only cracked when he smelled something rotten. When I laid out the boundary map, the retirement date of the county clerk, and the fact that 3 separate HOA inspectors had prior assault records sealed in other states, his eyes finally narrowed. "You think this is bigger than Deborah?" he asked. "I think she's the front." I said, "Someone's feeding her this power." He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his jaw. "You know what developers pay per acre now, especially out here." That's when the puzzle clicked. This wasn't about chickens. It wasn't about roosters or red barns or aesthetic violations. It was a land grab. Turns out, a holding company named Delta Sun Partners LLC had been quietly buying up non-compliant lots near Clear Valley for months. Properties seized or surrendered under HOA pressure, some for pennies on the dollar. Guess who founded Delta Sun? Deborah's brother-in-law. Guess who notarized most of the deed transfers? The retired county clerk who rubber-stamped the boundary expansion. It was all connected. A fake HOA authority expansion, enforced by privately hired muscle, leading to unjust liens or seizures. And then those lands were resold to developers planning a high-end golf resort and airstrip. They didn't care who they steamrolled, as long as the paperwork looked clean and the victims were too scared or broke to fight. I had evidence now, but evidence isn't power. Not unless people see it. That's when I started building the alliance. I knocked on doors. I went farm to farm with a folder full of records and a message simple as spit. "They're trying to erase us, but not if we stand together." At first, folks were hesitant, beaten down, tired, but when they saw the maps, when they saw their names on complaint lists they never signed, something sparked. Angela Reyes wept. Franklin stood up straighter. The Jackson twins, 2 scrappy brothers with old trucks and louder mouths, offered their welding shed as a meeting spot. We weren't just neighbors anymore. We were a defense line. We started small, recorded testimonials, posted flyers at feed stores and churches, created a website, Defend the Creek. By week's end, we had 112 signatures and counting. The real heat came when local news got wind. I didn't think they'd bite. But then Angela's story went viral on a small Facebook group, and suddenly reporters were calling. We gave them everything. And that's when Deborah's perfect house of lies started to shake. Because once the light shines in, the cockroaches run. If you've never seen a lie collapse in real time, let me tell you, it doesn't fall gently. It crumbles in flashes, on the evening news, in parking lot whispers, in the quiet gasp of a woman realizing the world doesn't fear her anymore. That's what happened to Deborah Cartwright. After the sheriff's office confirmed that the HOA had no legal jurisdiction over my property and half the other homes they'd been targeting, word got out fast. Too fast for her to spin it. The local news station ran a segment titled "Fake HOA Targeted Rural Families, but Got Caught Red-Handed." They showed satellite maps, boundary line overlays, and interviewed Angela Reyes with her 3 kids standing behind her. And then they played it body cam footage of my arrest attempt, the zip ties, the fake officers, the moment the sheriff's cruisers tore onto my land. I watched it from my porch, the glow of the TV flickering through the window behind me. My phone buzzed all night with calls from strangers thanking me, telling me their own stories, asking how to fight back. Deborah went silent, but her silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. 3 days after the news aired, a cease and desist letter showed up in my mailbox. Not from Deborah this time, but from the law firm representing Delta Sun Partners LLC. They accused me of defamation, public incitement, and obstruction of future developments. It was a scare tactic, plain and simple. A $50 million company trying to bully a rancher into silence. But this wasn't just about me anymore. Angela brought the letter to our next meeting, tears in her eyes. They said if I keep posting, they'll sue me for damages, she said, voice shaking. That's when Franklin stood damn near 80 hands shaking from Parkinson's and slammed his palm on the folding table. They want a war, he said, voice gravel and thunder. Let's give them one. That night, we organized the Creekside Community Council. No, it wasn't official, but it was loud. We held a public gathering at the town's old firehouse. 137 people showed up. Farmers, single moms, veterans, retirees, folks who hadn't been in the same room in years, if ever. I took the mic, cleared my throat, and laid it all out. The fake enforcement, the boundary scam, the shady developer connections, and the silent complicity of a system that let a private HOA pretend it was the law. Then I handed the mic to Angela, to Franklin, to the Jackson twins, to anyone who wanted their voice back. We recorded it all, live-streamed it, shared clips. By morning, the hashtag #WhereNotYourLand was trending statewide. But the real turning point that came when Sheriff Caldwell stepped into the firehouse that night uninvited, in full uniform. Everyone quieted. He walked to the front and said one sentence that changed everything. We are reopening investigations into all property seizures related to the Clear Valley HOA and Delta Sun Partners. A beat passed, then cheers. People wept, hugged, cursed out loud in joy. For the first time in months, maybe years, folks felt seen. But karma wasn't done yet. Because what we didn't know was that Deborah, in her desperation, had sent one last enforcement team out, this time to Franklin's place. She must have thought the old man was vulnerable, easy to intimidate. What she didn't count on was that Franklin had just installed motion-activated security cams, and his nephew, a retired MP, was staying the week. The footage, it showed 3 HOA officers, one of them with a baton, another carrying what looked like tear gas, trying to force Franklin's gate open at midnight. They didn't make it far. His nephew ordered them to the ground, zip-tied them with their own tools, and called the real deputies. 2 were armed. 1 was out on parole. It was the nail in the coffin. Deborah was arrested again, this time on conspiracy, fraud, and endangerment. Her mugshot made the front page of the state paper. Delta Sun Partners pulled out of the region 2 days later, citing community pushback and hostile land conditions. The county commission scheduled emergency hearings. The fake HOA bylaws were nullified, and the former clerk who approved the boundary extension was subpoenaed. But all that was just cleanup. The real victory. We got our land back, and we got each other. The morning after Deborah Cartwright's second arrest, I walked the fence line at sunrise. Just me, the rustle of dry grass, and the old windmill creaking with every turn. The land felt different now. Not just freer, but respected. As if it had watched everything happen and now stood a little taller. Like the ghost of my granddad was nodding somewhere near the tree line. Arms crossed, satisfied we'd held the line. But we weren't done yet, not by a long shot. After Deborah's indictment and the collapse of Delta Sun Partners' local development plans, things changed fast. The county launched a formal investigation into all HOA chartered enforcement activities. Turns out, Clear Valley wasn't the only one playing fast and loose with their authority. 2 other HOAs in the region had been quietly mimicking the same tactics, pushing fake boundaries, leveraging fear, and exploiting the elderly and the poor. Public outrage poured in like a broken dam. Within weeks, the county recorder's office revised parcel notification protocols. A bill was introduced at the state level to limit HOA enforcement rights to only properties that opt in with signed consent. And for the first time ever, the sheriff's office created a rural property task force, deputies trained to investigate and respond to HOA fraud. Angela Reyes was appointed to the oversight committee. Franklin Wood had his land title publicly reaffirmed at the town hall, where the mayor himself handed him the document and called him a pillar of honor. As for me, well, I got offered a seat on that same committee, turned it down, told them I'd rather be out on the land than behind a desk. Instead, I helped to set up Creek Watch, an informal network of neighbors who check in on each other, record any suspicious activity, and post regular updates, not out of fear, but out of respect. That's what this whole fight was about. In the end, not property, not power, respect. A month after it all went down, I got a letter in the mail. It was handwritten, no seal, just folded into a plain envelope. It read, "You reminded this town that lines on a map don't erase what's real. Thank you. A neighbor. No name. Didn't need one. I pinned it up in the barn next to my granddad's photo, right under the burn mark left by the smoke grenade they tossed. Now and then, people still stop by. Some just want to shake my hand. Some want to tell their own stories. Some just want to walk the creek to see where it all started. I welcome them all, because this land, it's not just mine anymore. It belongs to us, the folks who stood when it counted." So now I ask you, have you ever questioned who really holds power in your neighborhood? Have you checked where the lines are drawn? And who's drawing them? Because justice doesn't just live in courtrooms or county offices. Sometimes it starts in a chicken coop, with a man refusing to kneel. Share your story. Speak your truth. And if someone's trying to erase your roots, stand tall. They can't take what you won't surrender.